Oh joy, today has been a fun day of technical difficulties. Sorry about that, my screen went dead. I thought it was the battery pack. No, the screen went dark, but apparently it was still recording. So when I tried to get the screen to come back on, I actually turned off the video. So I'm going to pick up from where I was. Okay, real quick, we'll go over what the problem was. Flight attendant pulls her 70 Newton bag across a 253 meter distance at an airport level floor. Okay, the force she exerts is 40 newtons at an angle of 52 degrees above the horizontal. Find the following. Okay, what work she does on the flight bag, the work done by the force of friction on the flight bag, and the coefficient of friction between the flight bag and the floor. Okay, at the end of the first video, I should have solved for part A. We should know how much work was done by the flight attendant. That turned out to be 6,230 joules. Okay, now we're looking at what the force of friction work was. So, doing that, we know the sum of the forces in the x direction are 0. Okay, remember, we're doing a lot of this sum of forces things. Okay, we get to know things. The sum of the forces in the x direction is 0. Why? I'm not accelerating in the x direction. Okay. Again, some of the forces in the y direction have to be 0 because I'm not accelerating in the y direction either. Well, if the sum of the forces in the x direction are 0, the two forces we have acting in the x direction are the force applied in the x direction and minus the force due to friction. That's the force due to kinetic friction in this case. What does that tell me? That tells me the force due to kinetic friction must equal the applied force in the x direction. If we think about that, the bag isn't accelerating. If it's not accelerating, I must have an equal and opposite force balancing it out if it's moving at a constant velocity. So we have this. I know what the frictional force is. Well, work equals the force applied times the distance and the cosine of the angle between them. Well, guess what? In this case, my force applied in the x direction, my frictional force, distance, those we both know. What's the cosine of the angle between them, though? In this case, my cosine of that angle is 180 degrees. Why? I'm applying the force in this direction. Well, what direction am I moving? That direction. And the funny thing is, the cosine of 180 is -1. So this is going to equal the opposite of the force applied in the x direction times the displacement. Lo and behold, that's just going to end up being what we got before. I'm going to take the force applied in the x direction and multiply that by 253. So the force applied in the x direction, so we're going to take the negative. We're going to take the force applied in the x direction, which was 40 newtons. Okay, we have the negative, the 40 newtons, the cosine of that angle to get the force applied in the x direction, which in this case was 52.0, which we would have calculated from before. That's what that is, times 253. I've already told you what the answer should be. If you solve this, you end up getting minus 6.23 times 10 to the third joules. Equal and opposite to the work done by the flight attendant. So the force of friction, equal and opposite to the work done by the flight attendant in this case. And the last step we want to find, so we have B here, is negative 6.23 times 10 to the third joules. And the last step, we want to find the coefficient of friction. Coefficient of friction, we have that the frictional force equals the coefficient of friction times the normal force. In this case, they're kinetic, so that would be mu sub k, and this would be F sub k. We want to find mu sub k. Well, mu sub k is simply then what? The force of friction, kinetic in this case, divided by the normal force. Which means, looks like to me, I already kind of know what the force due to friction was. Force due to friction was this. The applied force, cosine of the angle. So when I do this, I know what this is. I need to find my normal force now. Well, to find my normal force, I'm going to sum my forces in the y direction. So the sum of the forces in the y direction must be equal to 0. I'm not accelerating in the y direction. Shouldn't even be moving in the y direction. If that is 0, we have the fact that my normal force plus my force applied in the y direction minus the force due to gravity must equal 0. So therefore, my normal force must simply be equal to the force due to gravity minus the force applied in the y direction. So here's my normal force, which is simply force due to gravity, which is our weight, minus the applied force times the sine of the angle. So mu sub k is simply the kinetic force of friction, okay, divided by the normal force, this. So when I find mu sub k, it's simply going to be, well, we said this was equal to this. We'd already figured that out before, but this is the force applied times the cosine of theta over then the force due to gravity minus the force applied times the sine of theta. 40.0, sorry, 3 sig figs, cosine 52.0, multiplying on top, it's going to end up with 3 sig figs on top. The force due to gravity, which was given as 70.0 newtons, gave that to us, minus the force applied. In this case, it's the 40.0 sine of 52.0. If we solve that, this turns out to be, oh, I didn't even write it down. I don't think I did. These two together, though, this should be a number that's in the tens. When I subtract these, I end up getting a number that is, for the normal force, 38.4. So when I do this, this will be good for 3 sig figs in the denominator when you figure that out. 3 sig figs on top. And I get 24.626 joules. And then down here, well, if we're just doing force applied and sine theta, that would be newtons. My apologies. I'm going to step ahead of myself. Down here, we get 38.4795 and some numbers, newtons. Again, the units cancel out. Coefficient of friction should be unitless. And we get an answer of, very simply, 0.639987 and some other numbers, good to 3 sig figs, which means my answer should be 0.640. Okay, again, hopefully work is a fairly straightforward concept for you. Sorry about making 2 different videos. My technical problems, I don't have a way at the moment of combining or even editing my videos, so I'm working towards that. Hope things are going well for you. Be safe, do great things.